We are recording. All right,
Awesome.
Brian. Yeah, you and I have been kind of trying to put something together these past couple of weeks where you and I can, uh, you know,
Talk paleo and just about anything else we have in our noggins.
yeah, I don't know. We got the idea to record it, and yeah, maybe something of note will come out of our mouths. But yeah, here we go.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess it all harkens back to back in our back in the School of Mines days. Yeah, I remember there was specifically a time we were just standing in a hallway talking for like literally 4 to 6 hours about dinosaurs and stuff.
yeah, probably. I definitely. I think there were more than a few of those incidences. Um, pretty sure we got kicked out of Lower Surbeck at least once. Um, but yeah. Um, so I guess for anyone that decides to watch this, yeah, Brian and I were both geology students at the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology back in the before times, um,
Ah, four times, yes.
which is like I don't know, 2015. That was
Yes.
about yeah. So
Yep,
about 20,
fall
2015.
semester 2015.
Yeah. So that's yeah, that was where all of our shenanigans started, and of course our jolly band of paleo friends um, that we also met, and yeah, that's how those things kind of start. But yeah, we just kind of wanted to kind of come on here and talk current events, all things natural history, and so yeah, I guess we'll start. Let's see. Yeah, so Brian,
Rubbing my hands together.
you
What
wanted
to
to
start with?
you wanted to go with Jurassic World first. You wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been since June, and I guess we'll have to make another one because I mean, I currently haven't seen the extended edition, but I hear it's a little bit. It fills in couple of gaps that were present in the movie in the theatrical release. Have you seen the extended edition yet?
Actually, yeah, I caught that 2 or 3 days ago, and I think I really enjoyed it. I think it filled in a lot of gaps that ended up in the theatrical cut. Um, I think it kind of fills out the story a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, even though they only added like 14 minutes, all in all, it is kind of still a long watch.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
I so when it comes to I've seen the theatrical release. I do know that the extended cut has the prologue scene from the Cretaceous, and there is one scene from the extended cut that I have seen that's not the theatrical cut, and it's the Lystrosaurus. Sorry, spoiler alert. This is the Lystrosaurus versus the Oviraptor fight, and that was that was kind of funny, honestly. I mean, people are saying, "Oh, that's so graphic," because well, basically what happens is you have this animatronic Lystrosaurus just kind of moving its head like Baby Yoda, and this CGI Oviraptor just like chomping at the bits like a rooster. And then when they finally fight, the Oviraptor gets pinned down. Lystrosaurus just decapitates, and it's running around like it's chicken with a head cut off. And I thought that was nice. That was
well,
cool.
I guess it all kind of comes back to like how you interpret those kind of things, and I guess how you kind of interpret that animal. Some people think Lystrosaurus looks like, I don't know, an ugly bald baby, and other people think it's the most adorable thing going. Um, I'm kind of in camp B for sure. Um, so for me, watching a Lystrosaurus bite the head off of an Oviraptor was kind of like, I just I thought it was a little dark, but that's my 2 cents on that.
I think part of the reason they were showing that they, well, I think the reason they cut that scene was not just for time, but also it was a bit dark. But it really does help show the whole black market side of dinosaurs that the Jurassic World Dominion just kind of touched upon. Like these are, I mean, they're doing just about everything you can imagine with dinosaurs in the black market. I mean, we saw there's people like cooking dinosaurs and those big locusts. There's people selling them. There's
Yeah,
people just fighting
I'll,
them
I'll,
in a
I'll,
little fight pit.
I'll say that. I mean, if you watch the earlier Jurassic films and uh, you take in those like majestic moments, and I think Dominion just kind of was like, we're gonna show you how people would pollute that, and it's like, yeah, yeah, no, they hit that nail kind of on the head there with that.
Yeah. So that is the so one. It's kind of one of my biggest things with Jurassic World Dominion. Like this is taking place after Fallen Kingdom, where all the dinosaurs are either escaped from the Lockwood Manor, running around in the wild, or they were sold to like big billionaires and people who want to use them for all sorts of reasons. And it's not just like the actual dinosaurs; it's like embryos and genetic information, and like people can make their own dinosaurs or do their own genetic experiments, as we see in this movie. But they only really touch apart the whole fact that dinosaurs are living in the wild. Like I've mentioned this a couple times. Like the beginning of the movie asks the question like, can dinosaurs and people coexist? And by the end of the movie, it's kind of like, well, not really. No, they're still dinosaurs. They're still big enough to eat us or stomp on us and do all this stuff. But we kind of have to accept it because they're everywhere now.
Right, right, right. Um, yeah, I mean, I think, and I'll probably get nailed to the wall for saying this, but uh, I think all in all, Dominion watched more like a Jurassic Park book than a Jurassic Park movie.
Ah,
I kind of caught the subtle nods to, hey, corporations are evil, classic Michael Crichton.
mm.
There was that little nod in there about biosyn and their agriculture, and I kind of think that they were saying some things about Monsanto right there at that particular moment.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's a good way to look at it because, I mean, well, people often get hung up about the dinosaurs, which is, it's the whole point. It's kind of the point, I should say, of the Jurassic franchise. But overall, the main point is that science is going too far. Once you can genetically engineer a dinosaur from prehistoric DNA, you can do all sorts of stuff. So in this movie, like they don't really have the hybrids and stuff, but they have genetically modified locusts that are altered with Cretaceous DNA. So they're going around and they're bred to feed on crops that aren't created by biosyn. So I like that. That aspect is very Crichton-esque. I feel like that's something I could see in if you ever made more in like sequels to Jurassic Park. Because over like the book, Jurassic Park was like the island adventure gone wrong, where this big theme park goes awry. But even in the book, like I think it's the biosyn guys who are like they're talking behind the scenes, like, all right, gentlemen, we figured out. Hammond has done it. He's bred dinosaurs, and they're starting to speculate, like, oh, if he can make dinosaurs like their life-sized counterparts, imagine he can make a mini dinosaur and sell it as a pet that can only feed on food that InGen creates. And they're like, my God, this is incredible. This is something that we could do if we get access to it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The fact that Biosyn, they were the villains in the books, and now for the first time in, well, I don't even know, 20 something years, they're actually like in a movie, um, which I thought was a neat bit. But yeah, it's you know, that whole idea that there will be consequences beyond the intended purpose of whatever it is you're striving to do, unintended consequences. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, but all in all, though, I really enjoyed it. Definitely, probably it's in my top three favorite Jurassics for sure.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm gonna stick with it.
Well, like with the two of us, you're the kid who grew up with the Jurassic Park: The Lost World. I'm the kid who grew up with Jurassic Park 3. And I gotta tell you, like, Jurassic Park 3 has like the best merchandise line of any of the Jurassic movies I've seen,
Yeah.
in my
See,
opinion.
See that was the thing. I was, oh God, probably 3 or 4 years old when the Lost World came out in 1997, and so that was like my big exposure to dinosaurs.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that's the other thing that'll get eggs thrown at me is that two is like probably my absolute favorite.
Well, I think two gets a lot of flack just because it's hard to live up to Jurassic Park. I mean, well, I say hard, it's kind of impossible. I mean, Jurassic Park did in the movie franchise, in movies in general, was just something you couldn't replicate. Like they tried different things with the later Jurassic movies, but it was just one of those things where people were like, "Oh, this isn't really like the first Jurassic Park." And I went, "Well, you
Well,
can only
and
get the first Jurassic Park."
I'll also counter that by saying that that movie's impact on paleontology in general is kind of this pop culture anomaly that I don't think is really. I mean, I think
Are you ta-
the only thing you might be able to compare it to is the influx of that influx of interest in marine biology, from the Jaws generation of the '70s.
Hmm. Oh, that's
Um,
true.
that's
And then
maybe
even
the closest analog I think you could probably have for that.
I know there was so when you say like big influence, do you mean like Jurassic Park in general, or were you talking about the Jurassic Park franchise?
I guess I'm talking the franchise at this point.
Yeah. Because I mean, my nephew at the moment, he's 6 years old. He loves dinosaurs, as most 6 year olds do. But his favorite dinosaurs, in no particular order, are the T Rex, the Indominus Rex, and the Mosasaurus. So, being the paleontology uncle, I do have to kind of sit him down and say, well,
Right,
you know,
it's your duty.
one of those dinosaurs isn't a dinosaur; it's a marine reptile, and the other dinosaur isn't real.
It's like the nerdy uncle's Santa Claus conversation that you have to
Yeah.
sit down and have with kids when they're old enough.
But
uh,
honestly, so when we're talking about Jurassic World movies or Jurassic movies in general, I do prefer Jurassic World over Dominion. I must admit, like Dominion, don't get me wrong, it has some really cool dinosaurs, some really cool scenes, but Jurassic World, it's as a movie is I think just objectively better in terms of how the plot progresses, the big mean dinosaur, the
oh yeah,
final act.
yeah. As far as pacing and hitting on all that nostalgia, yeah, no, I like four. I definitely do.
And I mean, like people always. I remember when Jurassic Park or Jurassic World came out, and the first images of the Indominus were put in the marketing and the toys and everything. And there were so many like hardcore paleos were like, "Oh, that's just a big theropod. Why didn't they?" I mean, in a way, yes, it is kind of just a bigger T Rex, but that's kind of the point. Like, they're not going to make some weird alien mutant dinosaur. They're going to make a dinosaur that just happens to have some extra cool features
Yeah, yeah. The dinosaur
like
cocktail.
giant. Yeah, exactly. So I
Um,
don't see why people complain so much about like, oh, that's just another generic or Caradontosaur looking thing or Tyrannosaur looking thing. I mean, it did what it needed to do, which was be a big scary dinosaur.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's clearly
I'm with
so
you on
many
that.
kids that like
I think people were trying to. I mean, especially in the paleo natural history community, people were trying to read into that. Um, well, not certain people were trying to read into that. I'm just gonna you know yeah
yeah.
leave that one there. And leave it alone. But but yeah um
Well,
yeah
that's a good point in terms of dinosaur design because I mean you mentioned certain people. Well, I know who you're talking about for some of them, but also with the new Jurassic World Dominion, we have dinosaurs that, according to Biosyn, are like no longer any gaps filled. We're trying to get 100% of the genome, like the Moros intrepidus, which
so
even then, I mean, looks a bit off in some parts. I mean, it's a beautiful model, beautiful design for a dinosaur, but I think for one thing, it looks a bit small, and I think it only has two fingers. It's supposed to be a basal tyrannosauroid. It should have
I
three.
I need to go digging through the white papers because I want to find the description for Moros intrepidus. uh, in the literature. I'm just curious to see what actually, like I think that's like one of the things too is like when you see something in pop culture, I think it's cool to go in and read the white paper because then that really kind of helps you figure out what we do know and what we don't, and
So when you mean
where
white paper, do
were
you
those
mean like the
artistic
original
liberties taken?
publication? Yeah, but when you say white paper, do you mean original publication in that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's going to be artistic liberties taken, and well, I mean that's with every dinosaur in the Jurassic
Oh,
Park
well,
franchise, even
sure.
that are supposed to be quote unquote accurate. There are going to be artistic liberties. I mean the so what did you think of the Pyroraptor? That whole scene with the
Uh,
Pyroraptor and
yeah, I think I think it's an interesting idea. This cold weather dromaeosaur that's fluffy. Um, it looked good on paper for about probably the first 11 seconds, and then those artistic liberties took a dive into a frozen lake, and in my humble opinion, I think any ounce of realism there is kind of lost. But
yeah.
I mean, what were your thoughts on that?
Well,
That
you see, I
was
think
a sight.
it's a decent enough design for like a Jurassic franchise feathered dinosaur because it's got a very ugly, like scaly raptor face, if that makes sense. Like it's got the face of just a kind of like what do you expect for a Jurassic Park raptor. The rest of its body's like it's pretty feathered. I mean, I think the wings on its hand off, but that's kind of natural. It has that like feather ponytail. I wouldn't
Oh no! As
like,
far as plumage, yeah, I thought it was perfect, and
but
I think I
yeah,
know you saw that the wrists were pronated and
oh, never.
they were
But you
on
know,
the
it's
up and up.
in many scenes, the Pyroraptor is holding its hands like it should. In fact, that's to say, like most of the dinosaurs in the film, even the T-Rex, at most points in the film, are holding its wrists like they should, because that's a big contention. Like for those of you who don't know, us paleontologists have making a good quarter of our careers, it seems, just telling people like, yeah, so dinosaurs they didn't hold their wrists like zombies or like bunnies with their palms facing the ground. They held them with their palms facing each other. And
Yeah, that's a big one
things
that
you can
comes
see
up
that they
over and over.
updated. So the design of the Pyroraptor, I don't really mind that much, but its behavior with the like, I get why they did it. So you have a feathered raptor. I'm like, all right, well, aside of cosmetics, like it's just a raptor with feathers. So I'm pretty sure like the Universal team and Jurassic World's writers are like, all right, well, you needed this raptor to do something different. How about it swims in icy water? I
Well,
mean,
I
sure, but why don't you have the animal look like it should swim in icy water? Like I guess maybe it's kind of like a oh surprise, it looks like this, but it does this.
I mean,
But I feel like if you have it like if you give it feathers that look like it's a cormorant or something, that would make more sense why it's swimming through the water. Is what it looks like now. It doesn't seem like it's that adapted to swimming around.
well, so like I I have like half of an idea. I think maybe of what they're going for. I could have it entirely back as bass backwards here, but
Mhm.
like there's this the long held opinion that a lot of these dromaeosaurs develop this plumage for thermoregulatory purposes, and maybe this was Universal's attempt at, hey, let's show that particular thing off, and change perceptions, and yeah, have a raptor do something different. um
Yeah.
I the frozen lake was that was jumping the shark a little bit. I could have appreciated like a scene kind of like in Prehistoric Planet there with the Nanook with the Nanooksaurus. Like
Oh yeah, the chasing
if
the
you
blizzards.
had them, if you had a Pyroraptor chasing them through alpine lodges in the Alps of Italy or something,
Yeah,
it's just one of those
oh
things I
yeah,
could
they're
have
the Dolomites.
appreciated.
But yeah, that would be even cooler because then you could have like a raptor that's more it's like a snow leopard. It's camouflaged in the mountain and the snow.
Right, but yeah. That was the other thing I noticed that pop culture is now officially guilty of doing. So like Dilophosaurus now has this frill around its neck and everything, and apparently Pyroraptor has just been covered in a bucket of red paint, no matter what it's
Yeah.
featured in.
I mean, to be fair, in terms of like paleo media, like that we have Dinosaur Planet, and then we have this. I I cannot recall any other paleo media, like in terms of documentaries or movies that have featured a Pyroraptor, because it's just, well, for one thing, Pyroraptor is a fairly obscure taxa.
Y-
Like,
yes, big
kind of
yes.
surprised they chose it, but I'm fairly certain they just chose it because its name is like Fire Thief.
Right.
That,
Yeah, it's catchy. It's got that the old razzle dazzle, as they say.
but do you know the origin of why it's called Fire Thief?
Wasn't it found in a deposit following a forest fire?
Yes,
That
and
and maybe you can illuminate this for me. Was it found in a forest fire deposit, or was it literally found in a site that had been burned like a year prior?
oh yeah, no, so what happened was a forest fire moved through the area, exposed the rocks that the Pyroraptor was in, and then paleontologists found it. So it was exposed by a forest fire.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, no, props to them. That's neat.
there's
Um,
been times like out here in Wyoming, there's a couple of places on the property I'm looking at. I'm like, that could really use a forest fire or just a grass fire, wildfire, and I'd love to see what's inside there.
yeah, what comes out of the hill after it's burned away? Um, yeah, and then there was of course the Atrociraptors.
Oh, yep, the new Raptor squad.
Uh, yeah,
What
that was its own special thing. Um,
I the
Disappointed I didn't see
idea.
feathers on them.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, it sounds like they're kind of designer dinosaurs. So I mean, this is partially information I'm getting from the Dino Tracker. It's theorized that they were bred with Velociraptor DNA to get those certain markings, and they're also just raptors that are. It's pretty much kind of what they were speculating on in the first movie, in the first Jurassic World, about
Oh,
raptors.
in the
Uh,
marketing material.
yeah, and I mean, I liked the thing with the Jurassic World Dominion. Why I didn't like Jurassic World, why I didn't like Dominion so much, is that they have all these cool dinosaurs that they kind of just introduce, and they're just there for that scene, but you never really like see them come up again, or they're not mentioned. Like, I mean, I get it. There's a lot of time to fill, and there's just so many dinosaurs to go over. But the whole black markets with dinosaurs, and I mean, this new Raptor squad, it's just like barely touched upon. And then once they're out of Malta, like it's never talked about again.
Yeah,
Like
and then there was
the idea of,
that unfortunate, getting hit with a dirt bike and dropping from orbit there too. So,
I mean, I feel like that Raptor was just at a height where it wasn't too terribly
I
uh
mean,
like I feel like it wouldn't hurt it too much if it came down. I mean, it's a movie as
but
well.
I don't think it would hurt a Jurassic Park dinosaur because they make dinosaurs in these films like they're the Terminator.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
like throughout the
if they
scene,
were
like
the
the raptors
hollow
are getting hit
boned,
by cars and
if they were the
bricks
hollow
and such.
boned dromaeosaurs that you and I have read about in book and legend and everything else, I'd imagine a
Yeah,
dirt bike would probably. Yeah, I wouldn't expect good things on the vet bill. Um,
yeah. These and well, that goes back once again. Like it seems like these raptors were bred to be like guard dogs or pre- trained predators, like what they were trying to do with the Indoraptor or even Owen's Velociraptors.
oh, yeah. Yeah,
And I
in general,
really
they're
enjoy. Honestly, like I don't see why people were so like turned their nose up so much about it because I mean, like we've seen raptors just like wild, nasty beasts that are just like intelligent killing machines. Like, so what? We've seen that already. I like the idea of having trained dinosaurs, like or just domesticated dinosaurs to a
right.
certain extent. Like, I'm not saying like they're raptors are rolling over, letting you scratch their belly, but I like the idea of these raptors just be in a squad that the rich people can use as guard dogs or like to chase after people they don't like.
And I mean, if you want to really take it to that realistic place, let's think about the fact that falconry's been practiced for whatever hundreds of thousands of years, and as far as you and I know about Trudon, well, I'm sorry, it's not Trudon anymore, is it? It's
The Troodontids,
yeah,
but
but yeah.
Stenonichosaurus or Latibanatrix would be the Troodon replacements.
Well, and so you and I have heard it said that Trudon was likely as intelligent as what, a blue jay?
Yeah.
So if you can take animals with a blue jay's intelligence or more, I have no idea what what the intelligence is suspected of being in something like a peregrine falcon or a hawk. But it's like, if you can train hawks, you could probably put something together with a dinosaur, I would say. Um, Again, depending on the dinosaur here, gonna just knock on wood there quick. Um, but yeah, I guess that brings us to our next point. If you're willing to switch gears here, Brian.
Oh, sure.
Um, Speaking of genetics companies and doing all things irresponsible, or very irresponsible, I guess, depending on your take. Yeah, Colossal Biosciences and their recent announcement that they're going after the thylacine as far as
Yeah.
a target for de-extinction and resurrection via genetic means. Uh, I,
I can't say Colossal Biosciences without thinking of Biosyn.
I,
So
well, this was. I mean, you and I kind of giggled about this too, and it's like it's probably good that they're not publicly traded at this exact moment, because Jurassic World Dominion definitely would have brought some share prices down.
oh, definitely.
Um,
Everyone's like, "What the hell? This is what you're
Invest in us, but
doing?"
we're gonna watch de-extinction go awry all summer long. Um,
There's a couple more Dominion dinosaurs I'll talk about. I'll talk. Well, I'll mention in the near future, but it's nice to see that they're not like the mad scientists like saying, "Oh yeah, we want to de-extinct this because we can." It's more so like they're de-extincting it because like it's a in the case of the thylacine, it was a crucial part of its ecosystem.
and I'm seeing that with multiple, with both of their specimen targets at this point. They're obviously going for the woolly mammoth or something woolly mammoth esque.
Right.
I mean, again, touching back on the idea of filling in genomes in order to make things work. Um, but yeah, I read the blurb on their website, and it sounds like they're hoping that by re-releasing the thylacine into its original environment, which is still very much intact.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you realize that it only went extinct, so it went extinct in the wild in the early 1930s, early 1930s. Then the last one died in the zoo in
Yeah,
the.
I want to say it was 1936. And for
I'm gonna
reference,
look it up quick.
my great aunt, who lived to the age of 107, she would have been in high school when the last thylacine was killed off in that zoo.
Mm. Yeah, it's Sorry, I'm just pulling up the result for it now. Let's see, thylacine. All right. The last known live animal was captured in 1930. Um, all right, I think it's in. Extinction in Tasmania. Last known wild thylacine was 1930. Believed to have been a male. Ah, Benjamin. Yeah, Benjamin, the last Tasmanian tiger. Oh yeah. Oh, this was the saddest part. So the last Tasmanian tiger, it went extinct in 1936 because they left it outside at the zoo.
Yeah, yeah, they left it outside overnight and it died of exposure,
Yeah.
which to me is
You know
just
what's
horrible.
and just 2 months prior, this species was given protected status. They're like, all right, we got to hammer down. We got to save this
We've
today.
got like one left, but we forgot to bring him in at night. It's like
A
ah,
conversation with the zoo guard. Like, holy crap, that's the last one out. Please tell
I,
me, did you leave it outside? You bet your sweet Bippy I did.
yeah, I I would kill to be a fly on the wall that morning. Um, that's what a horrible thing. Um, but I mean, I've seen I've seen thylacine specimens that were obviously only in the literature. Um, but they've supposedly they've got a number of them in various museum collections throughout the world. So I feel like genetically speaking, I mean, getting genetic material for a thylacine, I feel like that's the easier part of this homework assignment.
Yeah. There's a lot of species I should say that have been extinct in recent years that we do have preserved specimens of, or at least recent enough material that the genetic information is going to be like actually pliable. Like it's not like dinosaurs, which despite the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World franchise have yet to show any intact genetic structures. Even at like the T Rex leg with a basic hemoglobin protein. I mean, it was enough to say we have a basic hemoglobin protein, but I there was no genetic information. You can't like extract the genome of this tyrannosaur and make a new one. But the thylacine that went extinct fairly recently, and DNA. I mean, it degrades fairly quickly, but these are still intact specimens. They've still got hair. They've still got flesh, tissue. It's
Yeah,
something to get stuff from, which is the same for a lot of these frozen mammoths that we're finding as well.
I'll say that'll be an interesting feat. If if they can actually resurrect the woolly mammoth, which I mean they've been talking about for years. I'll believe it when I see it. You know, but I mean, I guess that's a good point. Going back to Michael Crichton, he thought about this idea in Jurassic Park about mosquitoes, and no one at the time had attempted that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I believe that was how the Hell Creek project that the Museum of the Rockies undertook, and I believe on some level is still undertaking. Um, I believe that project, at the very least, started with the intent to find genetic material in dinosaur fossils.
um, what year was that? Was that after
Um, it
Parker?
was the early 2000s for sure, and
Oh yeah,
I
Jurassic Park.
think again, I think the goal there, if you did find anything, would have been for phylogenetic testing and placement. Obviously, no one's out
Right.
here trying to make an army of Triceratops. Um, that would have been more to establish family trees and etc. if it did exist, and I believe they came up empty, but there were some interesting developments as far as I think, yeah, like you said, collagen in the bone, and
Yeah, Mary Schweitzer finding that tissue preservation was definitely revolutionary. I still have to tell creationists like this isn't proof that the Earth is 6,000 years old. It just means that there are certain tissues we can find that preserve a bit better, but it still houses no genetic information or anything like that we'd expect from a creature that died 6,000 years ago.
right. Um, yeah, so I mean, that'll be interesting. It'll certainly be interesting to see as soon as corporate America gets a hold of Colossal. Are they actually going to do the altruistic things that we're seeing, or are they the next InGen? I don't know.
You know, I well, and when it comes to let's say we were able to do it. We get enough genetic material. We're able to breed or recreate genes into a stable enough population where they're not going to like be inbred and such.
Oh,
So
the mammoths.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or you're referring to mammoths?
I'm referring to silacines, or
Oh,
well, I
yeah,
guess
yeah. Thylacines, yeah,
mammoths and
totally.
silacines for that
Let's go with
regard.
that.
Any of these like recently extinct creatures, I assume the idea is to get a population where it's not going to be inbreeding, and also just something. Well, first of all, you have to worry once you get this population bred. Well, first you have to worry about poachers because these are now the most exotic animal on the planet.
Well, that was yeah. That's the other unfortunate can of worms.
That was a big thing in Jurassic in the last two Jurassic World movies. Like, I get it that they're dinosaurs and they're more valuable alive, but we definitely see a lot more dinosaur poaching. If like dinosaurs were just running around, it'd be pretty easy to shoot and kill one. Like, these aren't invincible creatures.
Well,
They're
and
vulnerable to guns and such.
and that's the other piece of it. It's like Colossal might almost be better off um, cloning in bulk because the more of them that exist, you'll actually drive any potential market price down,
Mm.
um, and thus lowering the incentive. You know what I mean? If you actually start with a sizable herd population, um, you might disincentivize the potential for poaching, but
Yeah,
it's
well, I mean, with
definitely
a
something
herd
they're gonna
like
have to do.
mammoths, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like the rhino situation. There's because that one like has a Chinese traditional medicine, the Asian traditional medicines for tigers, rhinos, etc. There's always going to be a market for them, no matter how many get bred or how many get lost. Unfortunately,
Sadly.
with the so they're an extinct animal, and they also have ivory, which is definitely another big hot button issue when it comes to animal poaching.
Right. Yeah, we're now in the realm of talking about actual de-extinct creatures, and yeah, the market value that comes with that. Never mind the ivory being attached. It Colossal might actually have to, you know, take a page from a lot of the protection efforts that are going on in places like Africa for those, species like the Sumatran rhino, these animals that are under guard 24/7. Um,
Hmm.
or they might even have to open. In theory, you might have to create your own reserve in these ecosystems that you want to rehabilitate, and you're going to have to babysit it and patrol it and watch it night and day, and
Oh, definitely. Like, it's gonna be
it's going to be an
uh,
undertaking.
it's gonna be like
It's
the
going to be done
northern white
well.
rhinos, where there's like four of them left, or well, were four of them left, where they
Were
had like
right.
of their own armed guards. And that's the other thing. Like, so the Thylacines, they have Tasmania. There's probably gonna like I imagine they're gonna start keeping them in captivity, making sure they're adjusting well, able to, well, survive. Once you get a stable enough population, you get them out and about. But what I'm wondering is, with a mammoth or like a herd of mammoth-like elephants, you're introducing them into the Pleistocene Park area, but they're also they're a large land animal like an elephant. They're going to need a lot of space, a lot of resources to keep them happy. And if they don't have that in a little in a certain size of reserve, I'm not saying the place is little, but they don't have that in a certain size, they're going to migrate. They're going to look for other places to feed. And how do you stop them from going out and exploring the new dangerous world?
Right. Yeah, there are some analogs here where science fiction and science fact might not be too far off if Colossal is successful in its efforts. Um, and I mean, I guess coming back to the thylacine, I think the only other option they would have is that they're going to have to lobby local governments to make the penalties for damaging and injuring these animals incredible.
Yeah, I mean, well, recently I can't remember where it was. There was a certain game reserve that pretty much just made a rule like, all right, well, if you're a poacher and you're coming in, we're gonna shoot you on sight. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you're coming to poach, we'll shoot you.
Right, right. Um, yeah. That who knows? I mean, you and I have heard of things in other nations around the world just regarding fossils. Never mind, the living creatures that that the remains come from. Um, Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, and kind of where you were going, is that there are a whole, there's this whole menagerie of animals that you could call recently extinct that Colossal could certainly use as potential stepping off and springboard points, I guess, before they go after things that have a more distant temporal range. Before you go after mammoths, maybe go after a few of these creatures like the thylacine that went extinct, in 1936.
Yeah,
I want to
even
say
the
stellar sea cow went extinct.
yes,
I
yes, that
want to
one actually I
say
was
early 1700s. Killed off by
yeah,
Russian whalers. I want to say.
it was yeah, I think the 1700s or
And
uh
I'll say that for anyone listening, if there's a hole in something, yeah, comment and let us know if we got something wrong. We want to know just as badly as you do.
let's see. Um it was described in 1741, and if I remember right, yep, 27 years discovered by Europeans. It's it went extinct. It went extinct in 1768, described in 1741.
So temporally speaking, breakneck speed. That's
Yeah.
really sad.
And genetic information from these, I don't know if there's any like there's skeletons definitely, but I don't know if there would be any particular areas where you could find good flesh or frozen remains. I mean, it's in the Arctic, but well, with given what's happening to the Arctic right now, maybe there is some melting out.
Yeah, yeah, maybe not a good, maybe not a great, maybe not a great one to start with. But I mean, you might still be able to find it in bone if it's only been 200 or 300
Yeah,
years.
and there is definitely like areas for these animals. The problem is like if you're looking at something like a Steller sea cow or a dodo or even a thylacine for that matter, they lived in areas or places where like for the longest time humans weren't really an issue. It's when humans were introduced and all this new stuff was brought with them that we start to see them go extinct. Because the thylacine, it wasn't just humans hunting them because they thought they were going to eat their sheep. It was also dingoes as an extra competition, as well as new European diseases that were brought into Australia and Tasmania with the case of the thylacine. And if we were to introduce extinct animals like the thylacine or the dodo or the Steller sea cow back to their natural habitats, it is still very different from what they're used to. Like there's shipping lanes going through the Bering Strait and all sorts of uh, just
Sure.
whalers, there's all sorts of people going through that area that the Steller sea cow called home.
I mean, if they
Uh,
go and clone the great auk, right?
yeah, that one.
The giant North American penguin, pretty much. Well, I don't want to call it
I
giant,
was
but it's a North American
yesterday
penguin.
the other day I was talking with some of my colleagues here at the Dinosaur Center, and we got onto the topic of de-extinction because I was talking about the colossal bioscience thylacine. But I was saying, so within like recent history, so thinking of like 10,000 years and forward, if we had an animal that we could bring back from extinction, what would it be? And I walk because I feel like that one it's a seabird, it's a flightless seabird, but I think there's plenty of enough habitats where it could probably survive and thrive if left alone. Of course, with climate change and the melting ice caps and everything, the habitats, I mean, once again, still different, but I feel like a great auk would nestle in pretty quickly to a lot of habitats. It probably expand, honestly. It probably could find
Well,
new habitats to live that its previous iterations didn't.
yeah, right, and there could be some advantages. I expect a great many drawbacks, but like I don't know. I think this is the other side of the coin where if we can't keep extant species in decent shape, do we have any right to yank these animals back from the dead to
Yeah.
to fix our mistakes? And I think good things could come of it. I think Colossal is hoping for a number of medical breakthroughs as a result of chasing de-extinction down.
Hmm.
Kind of, I believe I watched their talk at South by Southwest, and it sounds like they're kind of going for something akin to the moon landing, where they shot for this wild and amazing goal, and as a result, so many other technologies were created. And I,
That's
I, I,
interesting.
I think that's kind of the angle that they're taking on this, and and obviously de-extinction is going to be their major piece, and and genetic rescue of endangered animals like the vaquita.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Is that one extinct yet, or is
Last I
one
checked,
extinct?
only somewhere between 39 and 41 individuals left
Oof.
globally.
The Ganges
That's
River dolphin's dead. I know that much.
right. Um, yeah, we've lost a lot of species just in our lifetimes. It's really kind of a sad thing. So,
But
on one hand, I want to see them succeed, but I also want to see them do things responsibly.
yeah, well, I was about to say, like, one of the things you mentioned with Colossal Biosciences, they're not just de-extincting the mammoth for the sake of saying, oh, we made a mammoth. It's also to reincorporate them into a lost habitat. They're trying to recreate the mammoth steppe. They've already, like, in the Pleistocene Park place, they've already introduced like caribou and some form of bison and wild horse, if I recall. And the mammoths, like the turbulation of their hooves and feet, and there's these large mammals moving through the area, creates a habitat for grasses and other particular tundra plants to grow, and it's a way to combat climate change. Now, in my opinion, I think a better way to combat climate change is to focus more on the oceans because algae and kelp and those environments are really good carbon sinks, carbon absorbers, and I feel like those habitats definitely can definitely benefit a lot of other organisms as well. But just the fact that the mammoths are being brought back for the sake of these new ecosystems, or this old ecosystem being incorporated in a new way, I think is a very good way to is a good reason to bring back a species. It's not like Jack Horner's Chickenosaurus, which for anyone who doesn't know, Jack Horner, the consultant for Jurassic Park, the whole movie about saying, whether or not you, the whole, well, okay, I'm blanking.
Doing something for the sake of doing something.
What's the Ian Malcolm quote about that? You scientists were so preoccupied on whether or not you could, you didn't stop to think if you should. That's the one. So
Yeah. I don't think
chickens,
maiming a chicken from birth, uh,
yeah,
like you might be able to teach some people some things about evolutionary developmental biology. That was the hope in his book,
exactly.
How to Make a Dinosaur.
Hmm.
But that thing, at least on the inside, at least cognitively, is still going to be a chicken, and I don't think he's
Yep.
going to be a very happy chicken.
Yeah, it's
Um,
so it basically goes about like chickens and all birds for that matter have the same genetic structures to grow teeth and claws and long bony tails like their dinosaur forebears. So Jack Horner and his crew essentially said, why don't we tweak the DNA of these chicken embryos, or well, as you put it, maim, that's probably the best description of it, these chicken embryos, alter their genetics so a chicken grows up with claws and teeth and a long bony tail. It'll look like a dinosaur, but it'll be at its core a chicken. It's like it goes back to the whole Indominus Rex thing where you have this dinosaur that's built from all these different pieces. It doesn't know what it is. Like you have a chicken with these claws and teeth, and it doesn't know what to do with them. A chicken doesn't need claws and teeth, nor does it want to have claws and teeth. I
yeah,
imagine.
I
Because it
think the
doesn't.
best analogy I've got for that is the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. All right, like if you see I think last year it was Pikachu and Eevee in a sled coming down the street. Um, it looks like Pikachu and Eevee in a sled, but at the end of the day, it's still a balloon, you know. Um, or heck, even the floats on the ground. It's a car. They dressed it up to make it look like a football. But underneath the paper mache football, it's still very much a beat up Honda Civic or whatever it is. Um,
Yeah. That
And
was a good metaphor. Or analogy, the second one.
yeah,
It
yeah,
is.
yeah. Pikachu is a
Right.
bit lofty, but you get the idea.
No,
Um,
and that's I think one of the things that a lot of people were missing when this dinosaur chicken project came out. It was like, oh, they can make dinosaurs. It's just going to be like Jurassic Park. I'm like, have you seen Jurassic Park? The whole point of that first movie is saying like science is going too far, and subsequently that's what happens in the rest of these movies. Like science went too far, and like it shouldn't have gone this far. Like this was something where you didn't really need to do it, and now there's a Moros Intrepidus feeding out of this child's hand.
oh yeah, at the end of Dominion.
Yeah, that
Oh,
was a cute moment, though. I like that.
oh yeah. I mean, whether or not Colossal, I mean, I would be interested to see how their how their specimen roster grows in the coming years.
Right.
Because I mean, they only launched what I think in 2021. Um,
No,
they
they really knew then.
obviously started with the woolly mammoth, and now we're moving on to the thylacine, and it's only 2022. So, uh, so I expect that roster will probably grow. I think the genome for the dodo was recently. Yeah, I think they've compiled all of that, the genome for the dodo.
Yeah, I think, well, there was enough genetic information in recent years, and I say recent, like the last 15, 20 years maybe, that we knew dodos were genetically similar to the Nicobar pigeon in terms of its modern relatives. There's like a lot of big pigeons, like the Victorian crown pigeon is one of my favorites. I mean that one's like a big ground dwelling pigeon as well, similar to the dodo, but genetically, it's the dodo's closer to the Nicobar pigeon. And I thought that was pretty cool. How they're like, oh, this is enough genetic information where you're able to tell this. And I think you're right. There's a lot of recently extinct animals where we could have this information, and well, colossal bioscience in this case can recreate them.
Well, and this is kind of where I come back to, a lot of people are comparing them to InGen and Biosyn and, these bioengineering companies of science fiction lore. Um, but I think a key piece here, and again, I'll hold the feet to the fire here right on the Jurassic Park example. Um, in the Jurassic Park scenario, you're effectively toppling the order of faunal succession, right? You're taking animals that show up stratigraphically. Let's talk geology.
Hmm.
Stratigraphically, these animals would normally appear in a certain sequence geologically, and you're really toppling the order of faunal succession. And I think it's interesting that the more that we've dug into this, the more that we realize that things like that can't be done because of the half-life of DNA. And in my mind, I'm almost wondering, is that the natural mechanism that prevents mankind from toppling the order of faunal succession? And you know, with what Colossal's trying to do, these are animals that have so far, knocking on wood here, um, these are all animals that have passed in the last 2, 3, 400 years. Um, and then, I mean, obviously the mammoth is now, when it comes to the mammoth and the woolly rhino and the others that have been discussed, at that point, okay, yeah, now we're venturing into the realm of fossils, but I would say that you're still not quite tipping the scales of faunal succession because those are all animals that mankind's existed with.
Yeah, it's well, and there are plenty of these ice age habitats that aren't too dissimilar to what we can see in certain parts of the world today. And I think that was kind of the whole idea of the Pleistocene Park being opened up, where like, oh, this is an area where we can recreate the mammoth steppe. Like it's going to be a very similar, if not the same habitat when these mammoths and these woolly rhinos or whatever other ice age creatures get introduced.
Right, and I mean, and Ben Lamb has said this in his talk at South by Southwest. That they're not above they're not above going for predatory species. You know, the Jurassic Park example hasn't scared them away from going for predators. I think the thylacines that's a nice opening volley into that particular debate because it's not some giant freaky monster. It's a marsupial. Still a predator, but not.
Yeah, it's a top predator of its ecosystem, but it's like the size of a average dog, like a lab dog. So, a Labrador retriever, stuff like that. But it's the size of a mid. It's like a small, mid-sized mammal predator, and based on its bite force, it's not gonna like crunch into bone and stuff. Like actually, that was one of the things I heard about recently with the thylacine. Its bite force is extremely weak, and like
I,
so going back to more sad things about the thylacine, it was blamed for a lot of sheep deaths. Some scientists think that based on its bite, it wasn't the one who was killing the sheep. It was probably, ironically enough, dingoes that were doing that.
that's well, that just made this a whole lot sadder. But
Yeah. Going,
but
but going back to the more happy part, if there is like an introduction of thylacines, this isn't going to be like Jurassic World where these creatures are going to be going after us. They're
I,
like de-extinction, like, oh, something needs to quench my appetite. It has to be humans. No, this is an animal that's going to put back into Tasmania, and they're like, oh wow, these small marsupial mammals, these are my favorites. It's
yeah, I think it's important that people also kind of realize what is Hollywood and what isn't, and it's very hard when it comes to de-extinct creatures or even dinosaurs for people to take the Hollywood element out of it.
yeah.
If you watch any of the Lake Placid movies, there's just this, whatever crocodile running around eating people out of lakes. But $5 says if you went and saw one at the zoo, it probably didn't do anything for like probably 45 minutes. You know,
the,
um,
the same thing goes back to like Jaws and like the first Jaws movie with the portrayal of the white shark, like or just sharks in general. It was always thought, oh, you just put your foot in the water, they're gonna try and bite it off. Oh, you go swimming, they're gonna eat you. And then you actually like go in and experience a shark. Like, yeah, they're dangerous predators, but they're they're still animals. They're not gonna go out of their way to eat you.
yeah, right, and I wouldn't expect that out of a thylacine. I'm not saying that I want to meet one in a dark alley at night, but
Right.
but I think in terms of large and grandiose creatures, I'm gonna put it at a 3 on the shock and awe scale.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
It's an important part of its community.
3 out of 10.
I'd probably compare it to like a coyote that we'd see here in America. Something that would it feeds on smaller animals. Like if it sees us, it's probably gonna turn tail and run, as opposed to like snarl and growl and try to go for a jugular. You know?
Yeah, yeah, kangaroo wolf. That's a bad name for it, but yeah.
So speaking of cool names, and also well, I kind of wanted to go back into the Dominion section of things since we mentioned the Hollywood aspect because of all the violent animals that were portrayed a little bit too angry, in my opinion. I'd say the tickle chicken from the latest Jurassic World was definitely an interesting way of showing off
Oh,
Therizinosaurus.
oh, yes, yes, yes. Good old tickle chicken.
I like how that's becoming a collective nickname for that dinosaur.
I will refer to it as nothing else again as long as I live. Um, yeah, we're keeping that one. Um, but yeah, I thought that yeah, watching a therizinosaur punt a deer into orbit was a little that was a little much.
This bitch empty. Yeet.
Yeah, yeah. Granted, what we know about therizinosaurs, their plant-based diets. Again, I'm not saying the fossil record gives us a whole lot of ideas about its disposition as an animal. It's
Mm-hmm.
entirely possible that the thing walked around with a chip on its shoulder and just sent animals flying, on the daily. I
Yeah, I
just
mean,
kind of doubt
when
it a
you live
little in my heart of hearts.
Therizinosaurs, uh, I mean, ecologically, they were compared to ground floss by some scientists. And I mean, it seems like They're just the theropod, the meat-eating lineage of dinosaurs that said, I don't like this. Leaves don't run away. I'm going to start eating them. But I'm also going to get very long claws in case my cousins try to eat me.
No.
So, and yeah, I feel like it is kind of appropriate to show it as a very like angry animal saying like, "Oh, get away from me. This is my bush." But I'm also thinking it's kind of into that Hollywood aspect of where they want to show an animal that's cool and violent, and it has 3 foot long claws, so they're going to show it use them.
Right. Um. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was. I mean, again, cool to see it get some publicity. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that was the best publicity, but it was publicity.
Yeah, I mean,
Um.
at the very least, it's gonna be like the Spinosaurus situation where this is like you get these or at the time obscure dinosaurs introduced into the public eye, and then people have like a reference to know about them. It's not just dinosaurs, they're like prehistoric animals in general. I had the hardest time describing what a mosasaur was to the general public because, well, it's like a whale lizard. It's like a lizard that took to the ocean and got the size of a whale. I mean, in terms of like the small, like a mid-sized whale, the biggest ones we know are like 50, 60 feet long for mosasaurs. But it's a
Sure.
lot easier to explain what a mosasaur is with movies like Jurassic World, because one of the things I talk about on my tours is mosasaurs. And I mentioned like, so has anyone seen Jurassic World or Camp Cretaceous? And then usually a lot of kids and adults are like, oh yeah, I've seen those. Like, oh, so you know the big water one that comes up and eats sharks? Well, that's a mosasaur. And people like obviously dinosaurs in the Jurassic franchise are the Mosasaurus, I should say, in the Jurassic franchise is oversized, has that weird crocodile scute back, and well, it's oversized.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Yeah, big kaiju lizard. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Then. Yeah. Speaking of your tours and tickle chicken. Um. Do you, is, do you guys still have the mount for Northern over there at the Dinosaur Center?
yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. So the year that I got here as an intern in 2017, when I was just starting out, they took down the Northronicus and the Falcarius because we have like the earliest known therizinosaur that's an omnivore. Then we have Northronicus, the one from Mexico that's bigger and nice curved claws and definitely a more herbivorous animal. They took those down, and uh, in like from 2017 to like earlier this spring, it was just a very weird looking Hypacrosaurus skeleton. It was a juvenile, and its tail is curled up like a scorpion because it was found articulated like that in the sediment. But recently, like within this last spring, they've been redesigning the exhibits and like the tour through time hallway, making it more open and easier to navigate through. And we finally have our therizinosaurs back on their corner. So it's easier to go through the museum and explain what a therizinosaur is now because of Jurassic World. Because as most people who are going through our museum now have seen Jurassic World Dominion at this point, and like a lot of people have asked me like, oh yeah, that Freddy Krueger looking dinosaur is that a real thing? I'm like, yes, actually, it's related to these guys. Or people see the skeletons, I'm like, oh yeah, those are therizinosaurs.
Yeah. Now that you guys have your own tickle chicken, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Northern slightly smaller than Therizinosaurus itself?
Yeah, so Therizinosaurus is the biggest one. I believe Therizinosaurus could get upwards of 33 to maybe 40 feet long in the largest. But I mean, the ones that we know of are around like 30 to 33 feet long.
Sweet Jeebus.
Nothronicus, so Therizinosaurus is also standing like 20 feet tall. So another thing, like, so going to the design wise of Therizinosaurus, they have its back horizontal to the ground, which for every other theropod would be accurate, but Therizinosaurs actually stand a bit more upright. So in reality, Therizinosaurs were actually pretty tall. Nothronicus is standing upwards of like 10 feet tall. There's a picture of me next to the skeleton, and Yeah, it's upright stance in addition to its long neck. It's a pretty tall animal. But overall, Nothronicus got around like think it was I think the mount that we have is around 15 feet long.
Wow.
Actually, this is a Gaston design skeleton. I think we could probably look this particular specimen up.
Well, I mean, I'm just harkening back in my memories because I was a wee Dino Academy student there back in 2012, and I remember seeing the Northernicus mount on display. I don't want to I don't want to say it was right next to Falcarius, but it was close.
Oh,
It was close by.
it's right next to Falcarius in this new in our new design. So we have that little. It's kind of like its own little pedestal island right in front of where the Maiasaura are. We have our
Oh,
Nothronicus and the Falcarius next to each other. Okay, so this skeleton mount that we have, it's around 14 feet in length and probably around 10ish feet tall because it's standing upright, which the Jurassic World Dominion one should be doing, but already big enough.
sure.
The feathering was neat on the Therizinosaur as well. Like
Yeah,
I
that was more or
conservative.
less accurate to what we understand about them, if I recall.
Yeah, the kind of like hairy, it wasn't like big tenacious feathers, I should say. It is kind of like very downy feathers from what we know of Bipaosaurus, the second largest animal that's been preserved with feathers. The largest one is Eutyrannus, early T
Oh,
Rex relative,
oh yeah, yeah. Uterus. Well,
which
why
I
I
do enjoy. They incorporated with the prehistoric T Rex design, like the Cretaceous Rexy has like it's got feathers, but they're nice like down hair like feathers. It's not like big panaceous feathers like you'd see on a chicken wing.
yeah,
No,
I want to
accurate.
say all of that's a reference to I want to say it's Bell et al. 2016, the Tyrannosaur integument paper.
Oh yeah, the was that the like scale versus feather paper that everyone got in a hoot about?
Yeah, everyone got up in arms about it, and basically it fired off the conclusion basically that if tyrannosaurs had feathers at all, they'd be around the dorsal section,
Yeah,
or
I
in this case,
remember.
a feathery integument. But um, I kind of think the jury's still out on that. I mean,
True.
statistically we have more specimens with scales than not, but
And T Rex
there's
is also
geographic factors. There's a whole bunch of things. It's not worth fighting about.
no, exactly. Like geographic factors is one of the biggest things. Like it's living in a at the time a fairly tropical or just hot environment. Doesn't need a giant fluffy coat like Eutyrannus. It's also like 7 to 8 tons of dinosaur, so it doesn't need a big fluffy coat to retain heat. It's a bit of a gigantotherm, as well as just being endothermic from what we know of dinosaur metabolisms. But it was still nice to see the hair like feathers, and I think so in addition to that paper, I believe Steve Rusatti's consultation was also a big reference because in the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, he has that whole little chapter on Tyrannosaurus, and it talks about the integument. He says, "Yeah, well, we know its earliest relatives have this form of integument. If T Rex is a descendant of creatures like similar to Eutyrannus, so it probably would have had integument, but not as like big and fluffy. If it did have feathers, it would probably be something like our human hair, just very sparsely coating on our arms and back and everything."
Right. Which, yeah, I mean, that's all certainly on the table. And I mean, kind of jumping from Dominion, which I guess has been kind of our focal point for our discussions tonight.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
uh, I forget what they named uh, the little Listrosaur in Dominion. What did they name him? Bernard.
Oh, did he have a fan name already?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
how
they gave him some ridiculous name, but I won't get too lost in the sauce on that. But I bring it up because I'm seeing rumblings through the social media channels about a Listrosaur mummy.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the
Um,
Africa.
I'm assuming it came out of South Africa. That's my gut feeling. I haven't read anything yet. Full disclosure, I haven't read any of the publications surrounding these specimens, but I have seen the pictures. Very impressive.
Oh,
Very
same
impressive.
here. I browsed the abstract and then I got caught up in the pictures and then I had a then I had a Dino detour at work to go to, so I haven't like sat down and read it yet either. But the pictures, it kind of reminds me of roadkill, or like a pig that's been flattened.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I'll also say this about Dominion. I mean, if those body proportions are anything to go off of, they hit the nail on the head when it comes to reconstructing this thing.
Yeah, that honestly, I like to say that there's something wrong with all of the dinosaurs or all the prehistoric animals in this case found in Dominion or the Jurassic franchise, I should say. But it's hard to find something wrong with the Lystrosaurus. Even the speculative fur is based off of traits found in the Theraspid groups, showing that they probably it's like some of them might have had whiskers, some of them might have had a bit of integument, or in terms of hair. In fact, I think there was a Gorgonopsid coprolite which had trace amounts of hair in it, or maybe it was a cynodont coprolite. Some coprolite that had hair-like structures preserved.
Oh, do send paper, please. That sounds neat.
I'll have to look that up again, but yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking oh, go ahead.
when I was a younger man, I used to I used to read a lot about the rhapsids and the Permian ecosystems just in general. Um, but yeah, I mean, Dominion kind of portrayed Lystrosaurus as this little tiny grumpy hippo, and this mummy comes out this week, and what I'm getting out of that is a very dead, tiny, grumpy hippo.
Yeah.
That's just the vibe I'm getting here.
No, that's how I've been trying to describe Lystrosaurus for so long too. I say it's like a pig hippo with a beak.
With a beak, yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. Our favorite little Dicynodont friend. Um,
It's a good reconstruction. I really enjoy it.
yeah, and well, like I said, yeah, that's as far as this mummy goes. Yeah, I think they they hit the nail right on the head with this mummy.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and that seems to be the thing with Jurassic is they'll portray something and then uh, the paleontological community will find something almost identical. You know, literally a week later. That's
Yeah, like that what was it? Oh, the
Utah
corn.
Raptor.
Oh yeah, well yeah, Utah Raptor with there was a mammal that I'm thinking of named yeah, corn hold on, let me starts with a C. It's the one that's based. You know what, let me just look up Giganotosaurus because it's found in the same formation. There was this little mammal that has these saber-toothed little fangs. It looks like a little saber-toothed shrew-like creature, but it also bears a resemblance to Scrat from the Ice Age franchise.
I didn't know that, but that
Name
makes me
is a
really happy.
reference. Its name is a reference to that. I just got to find out. Like it's in the same formation as Giganotosaurus, which also makes an appearance. I'll save my Giganotosaurus talk towards when we're closing up. Because in the meantime, while I'm looking up this name, since we're on the topic of therapsids, what did you think of the Dimetrodon?
Okay, so I really liked the Dimetrodon's reconstruction. Here's the thing that bugged me, and this is kind of why I hate being a paleo nerd and watching movies. You know, this is why my wife wants to hit me over the head. Um, I loved the design, loved the look. I liked the old school nod to the Topps trading card with Grant falling over. Um, but the thing for me, this was a real estate problem. Okay, location, location, location.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we suspect Dimetrodon had the fins on its back? Right, right. Thermoregulation, sunlight. That's
Oh, yeah. So I didn't know.
right.
I thought it was rhetorical.
Well, no, it is. I'm not out here trying to be a dink. Um,
No, I
entirely rhetorical. Um, but I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, cool design, but where is this thing spending its time right now? It's it,
in the
it's in a
amber
cave.
mines.
It's in a cave, man. Uh, I, I'm not saying it's out of the question that Dimetrodon lives in caves, but I feel like that just struck me as slightly counterproductive. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I know up and down one way or another what this thing did on its weekends, but I'm I would heavily suspect it didn't involve caves.
Yeah, from what so I'm a lot of this is based off like the Texas finds. From what we understand of those Dimetrodons, they were living in a fairly swampy habitat because one of their favorite snacks was Diplocaulus, the boomerang-headed amphibian.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, it's pretty cool. There's actually some neat fossils of Diplocaulus with bite marks in their skull that match Dimetrodon.
Oh, that is cool as all anything.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool. And honestly, I was just excited just to see Dimetrodon included in the Jurassic franchise.
Oh yeah,
As
no,
it,
I'm certainly happy that they branched out to add Permian creatures.
it's long been suspected to be a well, it was like in a statue form in the last movie, but long been suspected like, oh come on, we got to see it in the movie sometime.
Now, coming back to our Lystrosaurus, I
Mhm.
mean, we've all heard the stories about how rare it is to find a dinosaur mummy. All of the hadrosaurs that have come up, mummified. Um, and I'll just say this for anyone listening as well. When we say mummified, we don't actually mean mummified. We really mean buried so unbelievably quickly that skin and soft tissue fossilize much in the same way bone would. Um, Brian, do you think that's an apt explanation?
Yeah, yeah. There's,
Yeah.
I mean, some I've seen mummification for in the context of these fossils used for different specimens that are preserved in different ways. But overall, the end result is the same. You get mineralized skin and flesh and organ outlines and such so well preserved you can pet a dinosaur. Like Lane the Triceratops is sometimes considered a dinosaur mummy, or at least part of one, because he's got the big ass scales.
Oh yeah, yeah, the big scoot thingamajigs.
Yeah.
Um, can we just talk a second about how unbelievably rare that is to find something like that from the friggin' Permian?
Oh, definitely.
Like,
Yeah. I tried to pull up. I found a paper uh, linked to this. Unfortunately, it is seeming to be this particular place has a paywall. I might try to find like a
ew.
maybe there's an organization or
I mean,
nope. Okay, you want me to download a PDF? You want me to buy it? Hmm. So I've got the highlights here from the paper.
who's the author? Let's send an email.
Oh, Roger M.H. Smith.
Okay, we gotta track down an email and ask for a paper. Um,
According to
back
there's
with
some
that
high
next time.
above the abstract here. There's an outcrop containing hundreds of early Jurassic tetrapod fossils, interpreted as evidence of a drought. Okay, so droughts. I remember reading about that. Clusters of articulated skeletons and drought-induced aggregations. Mummified skin on red eagle's Lystrosaurus. That's a.
Wait,
I
wait,
mean, I
wait,
get it.
wait. Hang on. Does that actually say spread eagle
Yeah,
Lystrosaurus
I swear, it
in the
literally says.
literature?
I'll send you a screenshot of this just to show.
I'm I'm
Red eagle
trying
dicks.
really hard not to be like 8 years old and laugh at that, but I think I'm just gonna. Oh dear God, he just sent it to me. What is this? Hundreds of early Triassic tetrapods, clusters of articulated skeleton, skin on spread eagle lystrosaurus. He wrote it into the paper. Oh, oh,
That's
what?
honestly, so this is something we could probably, this is another topic we'll say for talking about in depth another day, but paleontologists, they need to get better at like communicating and having more fun with these because there's so many paleontologists and paleontology papers are just a bit of a snore.
Yeah, I was gonna say to the authors, maybe I'm just eight, but I had a good hard giggle at that, so thank you. Um, but 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 I mean, if dinosaur mummies are a whatever once in a lifetime find at whatever 76 million years, what the hell does that make something that we find at whatever the 250 million year mark,
Mhm.
280? You know that's like once in a millennium. More than that, what the odds are terrible that you'll ever find anything like that ever again.
Exactly, yeah.
I I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it because when it comes to dinosaurs, we get whatever it is fossilized, and in reality, we're only getting a small sliver of that ecosystem.
Yep.
Um, if you were to step back into, say, the Cretaceous with a time machine, you'd maybe recognize only 20% or 30% of what it is you're looking at, because literally nothing else makes it to fossilization. Never mind fossilization that well that we have skin. So to find a Lystrosaur in that shape, yeah, I'm kind of at a loss. I doubt it'll happen again.
And it
Not in
seems
my
like
lifetime anyway.
it was just these particular conditions that helped preserve this fossil because it says drought induced and then they got like rapidly buried, which is I believe indicative of, well, I should say I've heard of this being indicative of some dinosaur mummies like being preserved. Either that or just rapid flooding in general, that a dinosaur dies and then rapidly gets flooded, or there's a big drought, animal rawhide, and then it gets flooded.
Sure, yeah. Um. Oh yeah, like Boreala pelta.
Yeah, oh well, yeah. Boreal pelta was like, if I remember right, it died. It it got somehow drifted out to sea. Whether it got a big storm or a river that spit it out in the ocean, and then I think it was a bloat and float, which seems to be very common for ankylosaurs or ankylosaurs as a family, including nodosaurs and ankylosaurs, uh, because there's that Niobrarasaurus in Kansas. But it sounds like it bloated and floated, uh, probably just all the gases built up in its body until something popped it and it sunk to the bottom and then got excavated by a backhoe in a mining operation 110 million years later.
I Yeah, I guess that just leaves me with questions about our Lystrosaur friend because he looks like he got backed over by a backhoe.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder how I wonder how the little guy ended up that way. I don't know.
It sounds like based on what I've browsed in the abstract and these highlights, it seems like this there were these drought conditions that were forcing these animals in this particular probably a dry watering hole. We see this in similar cases with the Morrison Formation. I mean, it's also the same way that Dinosaur National Monument was theorized to have been preserved. You have these watering holes that animals depend on. When they head to there and there's no water, they simply die. So this seems to have happened with this Lystrosaurus and the other or Permian tetrapods. Let's say which specific types. I'm guessing it's both thoracids, synapsids, and amphibians and other reptiles or whatever. In any event, they're heading to these areas. It seems like they're saying this particular Lystrosaur might have died of starvation based on how clingy the skin is to its body. They have these like dried up carcasses until eventually the waters and mud returns and floods it and buries it, and it gets covered in sediment, and Fossilization process occurs, bing bang boom. Millions of years later, you got a spread eagle lithosaur.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I suppose that's the other bit. I- is that considered emaciated for a Listersaur? I guess we don't really know.
Hmm. Yeah, because it's a good point. Is it just a skinny animal? Is it? I don't know.
I'd love to see a reconstruction done, and then I don't know, maybe contact a veterinarian and see what they would make of it. You know.
Yeah, that kind of applies to all dinosaur, all well, I shouldn't say dinosaurs, all prehistoric animals of these varieties, where we have a lot of the skeleton to base off of, like, oh, maybe there was this much muscle, this much fat, this much tissue, but
Oh,
it's
but
very hard to really say
I was gonna
what.
say, Brian, you were just you were one verbal misstep away from being burned alive by every awesome bro on the planet. So congratulations on coming out of that unscathed. But continue.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, I was. When you have like only so much of a animal's bones left over, it's hard to say how much tissue was really applied onto the animal. Because I mean, you know the whole process of like the shrink wrapping, where paleontologists or paleoartists specifically, they'll just have a dinosaur skeleton and put skin on it and say, "Behold, this is what it would have looked like in life." It has all like the emaciated look of a dying uh, dying wildebeest on the African savannah in a drought, you know?
Oh yeah. Everything clinging right to its skin.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, ribs, shoulder blades, all there.
hmm And there's a reconstruction of Jimbo, our the big supersaurus, a really long, well, actually one of the biggest known dinosaurs that's been ever discovered. It's a really big dinosaur, really long neck sauropod, and uh, there's a well, an illustration and a model reconstruction, both of which are showing it as a kind of very uh, skinny animal. Like you can see its shoulder blade and its ribs, and well, I've talked about the string wrapping concept to Bill. Bill was saying like, well, if you look at something like in an environment that Jimbo would be living in, like a deserty plain, or in this case, like an Africa, a savanna-like habitat with a wet season and a dry season, you see animals with very skinny bodies. And I mean, at one point, I agree with that, but on the other, this is an animal that is 106, 109 feet long, and it weighs upwards of 40 tons. It needs a lot of muscle and tissue to hold itself together.
Oh yeah, but like you said, that changes with the seasons, just like everyone's opinion on this.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think I've seen the. Is that the one that's on the artwork on the wall in the dinosaur center?
The, uh, there's a couple of. So I think what you're thinking of, like this big poster that was taking up the entire wall.
I
Like,
think I am.
yeah, that poster is no longer there.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. My mental picture is a decade old, so.
I think that one's a Raul Martin uh, illustration though. That one's a pretty neat one. And then there's upstairs. It might be a Scott Hartman illustration, but all I know is like it's a very skinny Diplodocus kid.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Jimbo is. Yeah. He was like probably one of the first sauropod mounts I ever got to see in person.
Really?
He's cool. If you can get to the Wyoming Dinosaur Center, go see Jimbo.
Yeah. He's
Um,
the biggest dinosaur in the state of Wyoming.
yeah, I mean, let's see. I mean, I think we kind of hit the nail on the head tonight. I think we covered. Well, we covered Jurassic. We
Colossal
covered.
Bioscience, the
Yeah,
new
we
list.
covered De-extinction.
Yeah. If we're gonna close, there is one more thing I'd like to talk about with Jurassic World Dominion.
All right, Brian. Yeah, you mentioned this briefly earlier. So yeah, take it away.
Yes, the Giganotosaurus, the big bad of this new Jurassic Park or Jurassic World franchise. Like, so Colin Trevorrow in an interview stated it's like the Joker of dinosaurs, and it did pretty much nothing relating to the Joker. It was just another big dinosaur. It was cool. I like the whole big carnivore, and I like how it's actually a real based off a real dinosaur. But I don't see why they were going like the evil villain dinosaur route, or at least how they advertise it. And then all of a sudden, it's just another big dinosaur.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really do anything too terrible or dastardly. He was just kind of there. Um, you know.
The animatronic was really cool. Like I like the scene where the all like the old cast and the main cast get together, and then the Giganotosaurus comes out of the woods. That whole like scene where it's like standing up and roaring. That was mainly animatronic with its whole head moving, and that was really cool.
I mean,
I like the overall design of that dinosaur because I realize like I get it. It looks nothing like what we think Giganotosaurus looks like based on the fossils. It has like all these extra spikes and that weird hump on its back, like Concavinator and Acrocanthosaurus. But I like they did it because if you made a Giganotosaurus like a scientifically accurate reconstruction based on what we know now, it's gonna look like just another T Rex. So you got to make it spikier.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the only mount that I think the mount closest to you and I uh, is in the Fernbank Museum, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Cam Muskelly posts a lot of pictures about it because he lives in Atlanta. Well, in uh, I shouldn't say.
Well,
Well, Cam lives in Georgia. I know that much, and I know he posts a lot of pictures of the Giganotosaurus skeleton because it's in the museum he's closest to. And then whenever I look at those pictures, I'm like, I can't think of anywhere else with a Giganotosaurus skeleton in our country. There was like this traveling exhibit with South American and African dinosaurs that had one, but I'm kind of blanking. I think there's like this one other like private museum with a Giganotosaurus, but yeah, it's pretty much just the Fernbank that has a good Giganotosaurus mount.
yeah, yeah, I was gonna say that's probably the only one I could think of too. Um,
The oh, go ahead.
I think as far as that particular dinosaur as a villain, um, I, I, I know they're going for the Joker, and I'm really not ragging on Trevorrow because again, I love the movie, I liked the battle scene, I thought it was entertaining. But if we're
Yeah.
gonna talk about villains to compare it to, I've got to go with Dick Dastardly there from Wacky Races. Like you know he's gonna tie Penelope Pitstop up to the train tracks with the dynamite and the laughing dog, but you know Penelope's gonna get away. You know,
I can definitely
like
see that little Moros that picks meat out of its teeth as Muttley.
yeah, it's Motley, and that's kind of what I gotta chalk it up to. It's he's there, he's a threat, but you know they're gonna get away because they can't do Penelope like that, just like they can't do Grant and Sattler and Malcolm like that.
Yeah, when Dr. Malcolm
And I'm not
was
holding
having
that against them. I expect them to survive this movie. It would have been infinitely worse if they hadn't. But
yeah, I had a friend of mine who was like, "Oh, I totally thought they were gonna kill off Malcolm in that scene where he's taking the fire the locust and throwing it at the Giganotosaurus." I'm like, that what would be the point of that? Like, I mean, yeah, you get it, the Giganotosaurus is mean, but you kill off Ian Malcolm, that's just gonna lead to riots. Like that, it's
well,
not a very good.
and Malcolm's
And I really
playing the
like what they did
mouthpiece
with the
through the whole movie. Well, every movie.
yeah. You need Ian Malcolm for those, and I mean, you get rid of him, he's like, oh crap. But I really like that scene in particular where he throws the spear into the mouth, and then the Giganotosaurus starts breathing fire. That was a neat little visual.
I thought that was neat. That made me
and
happy.
and I liked and this is this is like added by the fact that it's included in the prologue. Like I get it, there's no way these animals lived at the same time with each other, but I like the rivalry that the T-Rex and the Giganotosaurus has because that kind of makes it a bit more of a stake. Like it's not a big one because it's not too terribly built up. There's so much else to juggle in this movie, but I love the whole aspect of the T-Rex and the Giganotosaurus being natural enemies. So in that end battle, when they're both in gathering at the Biosyn headquarters, like you see the T-Rex and the Giganotosaurus are staring each other down with these people in the middle. I love that line where Dr. Grant is like, "This isn't about us," because you can see the hate in both of those dinosaurs. Like, I'm tired of you. I don't
See,
want to deal with you anymore.
See, if we're gonna go with T-Rex and its natural enemies, I think going for scientific accuracy may not have made for a great movie, but I think it would have definitely upped the comedic factor. Like, can
Mm-hmm.
you imagine if they're like, imagine the entire movie, but instead of velociraptors or something, it's just a triceratops just coming out of stage left and just running people over. Like, and that's your big bad for the movie. Can you imagine that? Like it would be accurate because Triceratops and T Rex we kind of we know we're natural enemies, but
Yeah,
I again I think that would just I'd get a hearty chuckle out of that.
Triceratops was a like criminally underused in this movie. Like it's just a background dinosaur, but I
Yeah,
think like from a story perspective, it would be kind of hard for a known dinosaur in the franchise just all of a sudden
be
be
a
like, hey,
villain.
yeah, you T Rex, I don't like you, and then T Rex is like, oh well, I don't like you. I think it's nice how they did the other big carnivore because it's also what people kind of expect. They want to see the T Rex fight another big dinosaur.
Yeah, because if you have
Also,
Triceratops
just have
just
it fight
suddenly
another
go
T
bad,
Rex, but wouldn't be as cool.
if you have Triceratops suddenly go bad, I suppose that's just kind of like Old Yeller, you know.
Yeah,
Everyone's like, no, no, we
yeah.
weren't
You're
expecting
introduced to the
this.
Triceratops in the franchise as like that poor sick dinosaur. It's so under the weather, and then all of a sudden, like you see it in the last movie, it's like, I'm the villain now. It's kind of
I, I don't know, man. Like maybe that could have been Biosin's big bad thing, Dino rabies.
mm. I'd expect it. That is actually what the Biosyn did. It wasn't dino rabies, but it was like a rabies or some sort of disease relating to rabies that they un, unknowingly. Well, I mean, the
Oh
public
yeah,
did.
yeah, yeah. In the books,
They,
in the books they gave all of those farmers mad cow disease innocuously. Yeah,
yeah, that's the one.
yeah, that was dark. Yeah,
But
a lot of that book is dark. Ugh.
oh yeah,
Yeah, Nedry's death in that book, not for the faint of heart, for sure. Um, but yeah, no, I think we fired on all cylinders for our opening volley into the podcast business here, Brian.
I think so too. I think we went. Did we go over our time a bit or?
Yeah, I think we originally planned on wrapping this up at 11:10, and it is now 12:30 Eastern Standard Time.
Oh, hmm.
But I'm fine with that.
Yeah, me too. I think this was kind of expected for us, given given all the topics and given what we're talking about. I should say.
Yeah, we brought this up in the beginning, the 4 hour discussions. We gave to anyone listening, you were all warned.
Yeah.